Daf Yomi, Tractate Horayot, Daf 9. Daf 9a. Daf Tet Amud Aleph, top of the page with the words Lo Tagia Yado. Lo Tagia Yado, V'nemar, Lo Tasig Yado, Mishabal Yanios Vashiros, Yatsanasi Umashiach She'ein Bain Yedei Anios. And if his means suffice not, Leviticus 5:7, and it is stated, and if his means not suffice. Leviticus 5:11, indicating that the sliding scale offering applies only to one who can come to a state of poverty and wealth. This serves to exclude a king and an anointed priest who cannot come to a state of poverty. Nasi dichsi v'asach az mikol mitzvah Hashem alekov v'yishin al gabo vel Hashem alekov Mashiach dichsi v'akohen hagadol me'echav shehu gadol me'echav benoi b'choach b'chochma u'b'osher acherim omrim minayin she'im ein lo God lehu mishel achiv. Talmud lomar v'akohen hagadol me'echav asher yutzak al rosho. God lehu me'echav. The king cannot become poor, as it is written concerning him, and he performed one of all the mitzvot of the Lord his God. Leviticus 4:22, referring to the king as one who has only the Lord his God upon him. He is greater than the entire nation and is not a poor person dependent on others. An anointed priest cannot become poor, as it is written, and the priest that is greatest among his brethren. Leviticus 21:10, meaning that he is greater than his brethren in beauty, in power, in wisdom, and in wealth, not a poor person. Others say, from where is it derived that if the high priest does not have personal wealth, one should make him great from the property of his brethren? The verse states, and the priest that is greatest among his brethren, upon whose head the anointing oil is poured. Leviticus 21:10, from which it is derived, make him great from the property of his brethren, who will provide him with enough property to render him wealthy. By Rabina Nachman bar Yitzchak Nasi Shenitzta Mahu Midecha Nachi O Miftar Patil Amale Dilach Odegaza. Ravina raised the dilemma before Nachman bar Yitzchak in the case of a king who was afflicted with leprosy and unfit to serve as a king during his affliction. What is his status with regard to the sliding scale offering? Previously, during his reign, was he completely eliminated from the obligation to bring a sliding scale offering to the extent that even now, when he is no longer king, he remains exempt? Or was he merely exempted so that now that he is no longer king, he is obligated to bring the offering? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to Ravina, does he bring the offering from your property, meaning public property, or does he bring the offering from his personal treasure? Since he obviously would bring the offering from his own personal treasure, he remains exempt from bringing the offering. Tanya Rabbi Akiva Omer, Mashiach pato mikulan. Amar Rava, mai taima de Rabbi Akiva. Amar Krab, ze korban Aharon ubanav. Zo ba'a chova lo. Ve'en acheret ba'a chova lo. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Akiva says an anointed priest is exempt from bringing an offering in all the cases where one is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. Rava said, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? It is as the verse states, This is the offering of Aaron and his sons, that they shall offer unto the Lord on the day that he is anointed. 1/10 part of an ephah of fine flour as a meal offering, Leviticus 6:13. One can infer it is this 1/10 of an ephah that comes as an obligation for you, and no other offering comes as an obligation for him. Ve'ema ki memai le'achmana midale dalut umaynihu asirit haifa aval aniyut va'ashirut lo mate rachmana lo sar kedaitach dichtiv וכיפר עליו הכהן על חטאתו אשר חטא מאחת מאלה המתכפר באחת מתכפר בכולן ושאין מתכפר באחת אין מתכפר בכולן. The Gemara asks, but why not say that when the merciful one excludes an anointed priest, it is particularly from the type of sliding scale offering brought due to extreme poverty? And what is it? The 1/10 of an ephah meal offering mentioned in the verse. But the merciful one did not exclude him from the dove brought as a sliding scale offering due to poverty, and the sheep brought as a sliding scale offering by one with wealth. The Gemara rejects this. That should not enter your mind, as it is written with regard to the sliding scale offering, and the priest shall atone for him for his sin that he has committed from one of these. Leviticus 5:13. From which it is derived, one who gains atonement with every one of the types of a sliding scale offering gains atonement with any of the types of the sliding scale offering, and one who does not gain atonement with every one of the types of a sliding scale offering does not gain atonement with any of the types of the sliding scale offering. Elamiata tichtiv v'haya ki yasham la'achat me'ele hachanami tichol mitchayev b'achat mitchayav b'chulan ושאין מתחייב באחת, אין מתחייב בכולה. עלמא תנן. רבי עקיבא אומר, נשיא חייב חוץ משמיעת כהן. The Gemara asks, but if that is so, and the verse is interpreted in that manner, then that which is written there, and it shall be when he shall be guilty of one of these matters, Leviticus 5:5, so too shall be interpreted. Anyone who becomes liable in every one of the instances for which one brings a sliding scale offering can become liable in any of those instances, and anyone who does not become liable in every one of the instances to bring a sliding scale offering cannot become liable in any of those instances. Why then did we learn in the Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva says the king is liable in all of these cases except for the case of hearing a voice, indicating that he can become liable in the rest of the instances even if he is exempt in one. Abai v'Rabba de'anu itabayu mi'achas mashmalei le'achas lo mashmalei u'ma'ishna mi'achas le'mashmalei. Abai and Rava both say to resolve this difficulty, Rabbi Akiva learns this inference from the term "from one," Leviticus 5:13. He does not learn anything from the term "of one," Leviticus 5:5. The Gemara asks, and what is different about the term from one that he learns a halacha from it? De kasve achmana lebasov gabe asiri saifa lememra dechol v'chai basiri saifa דמחייב וכולן, ליצור דייתך מתחייב באחס, אף על פי שאין מתחייב וכולן, נכתבי להי, ויחד באלה בדלות אי נמי בעשירות. The Gemara answers, the difference is that the Merciful One wrote it at the end of the passage discussing a sliding scale offering with regard to the 1/10 of an ephah meal offering, to say that anyone who can become liable to bring the 1/10 of an ephah can become liable to bring any of them, as if it enters your mind to say that one can become liable to bring one even though he cannot become liable to bring any one of them, let the Torah write this phrase from one of these with regard to the offering brought due to poverty, or alternatively with regard to the offering brought by one's wealth, since this term does not appear with regard to one of the other offerings. Apparently it is specifically with regard to the offering brought due to extreme poverty that one who cannot become liable for that offering is exempt from the entire matter. Okay, it's the end of the Talmud. Now we're starting the Mishnah. Mishnah says, Kol ha-mitzvah shebatoira shechayavin al zedoinan kores v'ashigos l'chatos hayochid mevi kizba u'seira v'hanasi sa'ir v'mashiach u'beis din mevi'in pal u've'avod ezor hayochid v'hanasi v'mashiach mevi'in seira u'beis din pal v'sa'ir pal le'olah v'sa'ir le'chatat. In summation, for all mitzvot that are in the Torah, whose intentional violation one is liable to receive karet, and for whose unwitting violation one is liable to bring a sin offering, the individual brings the ewe or a female goat for their unwitting transgression, and the king brings the male goat for their unwitting transgression, and an anointed priest and a court who issued an erroneous ruling bring a bull. And for unwittingly engaging in idol worship, the individual and the king, and the anointed priest bring a female goat, and the court brings a bull and a goat. A bull for a burnt offering and a goat for a sin offering. Asham talui, hayachid v'anasi chayav v'mashiach bezdin v'turim. Asham v'adai, hayachid v'anasi v'mashiach chayavim. With regard to a provisional guilt offering, the individual and the king are liable, and an anointed priest and a court are exempt. With regard to a definite guilt offering, the individual, the king, and the anointed priest are liable, and the court is exempt. Al shmiyat hakol, ve'al bitui sfatayim, ve'al tumat mikdash ve'kedashav, bedin p'turin, יחיד והנשיא והמשיח חייבים, אלא שאין כהן גדול, משיח חייב על טומאת מקדש וקודשם. דברי רבי שמעון, ומה הם מביאים? קורבן עולה ויורד. רבי אלעזר אומר, הנשיא מביא סוהר. For hearing of a voice, meaning a false oath of testimony, and for a false oath on an utterance of the lips, and for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods, a court is exempt, and the individual, the king, and the anointed priest are liable. But an anointed high priest is not liable for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. For this is the statement of Rabbi Shimon. And what offering are they liable to bring? It is a sliding scale offering based on their financial circumstances, as delineated in the Torah. See Leviticus 5, 1-13. Rabbi Elazar says the king brings a goat. That's the Mishnah. And now for the Talmud. Gemara says, Tanya, Rabbi Shimon haya noten klal, כל שהיחיד בה שם תלוי, הנשיא כיוצא בו. משיח ובית דין פטורים. כל שהוא באשם ודאי. נשיא ומשיח כיוצא בהן ובית דין פטורים. It is taught in Brighton that Rabbi Shimon would posit a principle. For any case in which the individual is liable to bring a provisional guilt offering, the status of the king is like that of the individual, and the anointed priest and the court are exempt. And for any case in which an individual is liable to bring a definite guilt offering, the status of the king and an anointed priest is like that of an individual, and that court is exempt. Shmiyat kol u'bitui sfatayim v'tumat mikdash v'kadashav beitim petorin nasi Mashiach hayavin ela she'en nasi chayav b'shmiyat kol v'lo Mashiach v'tumat mikdash v'kadashav kol she'u v'olev yored nasi chayot tzivah Mashiach u'beitim petorin. He continues, for hearing of a voice being a false oath of testimony, for a false oath of utterance of lips, and for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods, a court is exempt. And a king and an anointed priest are liable, but the king is not liable in the case of hearing a voice, and an anointed priest is not liable for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. In general, for any case for which an individual is liable to bring a sliding scale offering, the status of the king is like that of the individual, and anointed priest and court are exempt. Haguf Akashia Amrit She'en Mashiach Hayab B'tumat Mikdash V'Gadashav U'Debato Aval Shmiyat Kol U'B'Dois Masayim Chayav Ema Sefer Kol Shehu B'Oyle Yoired Nasi Kayot Zebo Mashiach U'Betin B'Turin Katani Mashiach U'Betin B'Turin Ma B'Din B'Turin Nikulahon Af Mashiach B'Turin Nikulahon. The Gemara expresses surprise. The Braita itself is difficult. You said that an anointed priest is not liable for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods, and by inference it is for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods that he is exempt, but he is liable for hearing of a voice and for the statement of the lips. Say the latter clause from the Braita. For any case for which an individual is liable to bring a sliding scale offering, the status of a king is like that of the individual, and an anointed priest and a court are exempt. He teaches an anointed priest and a court are exempt, just as a court is exempt from all of the sliding scale offerings. So too, an anointed priest is exempt from all of them, not only from the offering for the defiling of the temple or sacrificial foods, sacrificial foods. And now we turn to 9b, top of the page, where we should continue, God willing, after the break. Here's Hashem after the break. Continuing on the top of 9b with the words Kashyan Ahadadi. If so, these two passages are difficult as they contradict one another. Amar Rav Huna bereid Rav Yehoshua lo kashya. Kan bedalut. Kan bedali dalut. ורבי שמעון סבר לה כרבי עקיבא בחלי גלה לחדה סבר לה כרבי עקיבא בדלי דלות בטבעת בלי גלה בדלות. Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yehoshua, said, this is not difficult, as there is a distinction between the rulings. Here in the passage that deems the anointed priest liable in cases other than the defiling of the temple, it is in the case of an offering brought due to poverty. Whereas there, in the latter clause, it is in the case of an offering brought due to extreme poverty. And Rabbi Shimon holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva with regard to one halacha, and disagrees with him with regard to one other halacha. He holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva in the case of extreme poverty, that the anointed priest is exempt from bringing that meal offering, and he disagrees with Rabbi Akiva in the case of poverty, as he does not hold that the anointed priest is completely exempt from bringing a sliding scale offering. Ela she'en kohen gadol chayav kule amar Chizkiya mai tamad Rabbi Shimon dichtiv v'nichleta hanefesh ahi mitoch hakahal mi shekorbano shaveh lekahal yatsa zeh she'en korbano shaveh lekahal. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Shimon says, but an anointed high priest is not liable for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. Chizkiya said, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon? It is as it is written with regard to one who becomes ritually impure and enters the temple. And a man who shall be impure and shall not be purified, that soul shall be excised from the midst of the congregation, because he has defiled the sanctuary, or the water of sprinkling has not been sprinkled on him. He is impure. Numbers 19:20. It is derived from this verse that the halacha applies specifically to one whose offering equals the offering of the congregation, meaning the Jewish people. This serves to exclude the high priest, as his offering does not equal the offering of the congregation. As on Yom Kippur, he brings a bull for his unwitting transgression, while he brings a goat to achieve atonement for the Jewish people. Im kein nasi nami, ein korbanon shaveh lekahal, shaveh chavra Yom Kippurim. Im kein kohanim nami lo. Excuse me. Im kein kohanim nami lo shavu lekahal bechavra Yom Kippurim. Kohanim shavu lekahal b'shar mitzvot yishana kula. The Gemara asks, if so, a king too should be exempt, as his offering does not equal the offering of the congregation as he brings the goat. The Gemara answers, even so, the king equals the congregation in the atonement of Kippur, as his atonement is achieved by means of the same offerings through which the rest of the congregation achieved atonement. The Gemara asks, if so, priests too should be exempt from bringing the offering for the defiling of the temple, as they do not equal the congregation in the atonement of Yom Kippur, as their atonement is achieved by means of the bull of the high priest. The Gemara answers, priests equal the congregation with regard to atonement for the rest of the mitzvot of the entire year. Mashiach nami hashav b'shar mitzvot dishana el ha'amarava emahachi mi shechatato shaveh lichidein. The Gemara challenges, the anointed priest too equals the congregation with regard to atonement for the rest of the mitzvot of the entire year. Rather, Rava said, say this, one whose sin offering equals that of individuals. And who are these individuals? They are the congregation. The status of the congregation that performed an unwitting transgression, not on the basis of the ruling of the court, is that of the individuals, the high priest. Sin offering is different, as he brings the sin offering only for an unwitting transgression he performed on the basis of his own ruling. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Hanasi mevi sayir v'kulei. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo amar Rabbi Eliezer ela b'tumat v'kedash v'kedashav ho'il v'ne'emar karet bo ki'evik kavua. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Eliezer says the king brings a goat and not a sliding scale offering. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Eliezer stated his opinion only with regard to defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods, since karet is stated concerning it, as it is stated in all matters, where there is a liability to bring a fixed sin offering, just as the king brings a goat as a sin offering for any unwitting transgression for whose intentional violation one is liable to receive karet, so too he brings a goat for the defiling of the temple, for other unwitting transgressions for which one is liable to bring a sliding scale offering, and for whose intentional violation one is not liable to receive karet. The king is also liable to bring a sliding scale offering. Amar of Papa said, Dai 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 dai. Hacha nami mistavra, Yisrael gedaitach Rabbi Eliezer al-Kulahon. Kamar bichti sayir nasir par Mashiach. B'makom yachin echdat kai. Nitani nami Mashiach. Maybe par b'shmiyat kol. Uvitu isfatayim. Ela min elak etani Mashiach. Shma minat tumat mikdash b'kadashav kai. Di Mashiach batu. Rav Papa said, so too it is reasonable, as if it enters your mind to say that Rabbi Eliezer says that the king brings a goat for all the transgressions enumerated in the Mishnah, and the king brings a goat in cases where individuals bring a sliding scale offering. And since the goat of a king and the bull of an anointed priest stand in the place of liability of an individual to bring his sin offering, that Rabbi Eliezer also teach, and the anointed priest brings a bull for hearing of a voice, and for an utterance of the lips. Rather, from the fact that Rabbi Eliezer does not teach this halacha with regard to anointed priest, learn from it that his statement that the king brings a goat stands in the reference only to the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. With regard to it, an anointed priest is exempt in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Amalei Ravuna b'rei Rav Natan Rav Papa Mimai Dilma Rabbi Eliezer Akula Honkai U'Mashiach Savarda Rabbi Akiva da Mashiach Patur B'Kulan Amalei Rabbi Akiva Mi Patar Le Mi Par B'tu Lamidi. Rav Huna, son of Rav Natan, said to Rav Papa, "From where do you prove this? Perhaps the statement of Rabbi Eliezer stands in reference to all of them." And with regard to an anointed priest, he holds it according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says, "An anointed priest is exempt from all of the cases where one is liable to bring a sliding scale offering." Rav Papa said to him, and Rabbi Akiva, "Does he exempt an anointed priest from bringing a bull?" Rabbi Akiva exempted him only from bringing a sliding scale offering, but he holds that the high priest is liable to bring the offering unique to him, the bull for an unwitting transgression he performed on the basis of his own erroneous ruling, and nothing more need be discussed. Amar Yochanan, and nothing more. Betulamidi. You don't see it very often. Nothing more needs to be discussed. Amar Yochanan, Moder Rabbi Eliezer, Shem Nebi Osham. Tanem, Tana, Kamed Rav Sheshis, Asham Tanui, Ba'al Tumas Dash Tukatasham. Amalei Davalach Mini, Rabbi Eliezer Yido, Ho Yuvenema, Bo, Karet Kibi Kavua, Maite Nasi Saya Alea. Ve'omro Yohanan, Mode Rabbi Eliezer, Shein Mevi Asham Tanui, Kashia. And that concludes the parak of Horayot, Kohen Mashiach. Okay, let's see the translation. Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Eliezer concedes that a king does not bring a guilt offering for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. The Tana, who recited Mishnayot and Braitot, in the study hall recited a Braita before Rav Sheshet. In the case of a king, provisional guilt offering comes for the defiling of the temple or its sacrificial foods. Rav Sheshet said to him, "Who said this to you?" It is Rabbi Eliezer who said, since Karet is stated in its regard, as it is stated in all matters where there is liability to bring a fixed sin offering. A king brings a goat for the defiling of the temple, since the status of his offering is like that of a fixed sin offering. In case of uncertainty, he is liable to bring a provisional guilt offering. Rav Sheshet asks, but didn't Rabbi Yochanan say, Rabbi Eliezer concedes that a king does not bring a provisional guilt offering? The Gemara concludes, indeed, based on the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, the Braita is difficult. And this concludes the chapter of Horayot Kohen Mashiach. Hadron Alach, Horayot Kohen Mashiach, and we now move on to the next chapter of Kohen Mashiach. Kohen Mashiach, Shechata v'yachar kach, the Mishnah says, Kohen Mashiach, Shechata v'yachar kach, avar min mishichuto, v'chen nasi Shechata v'yachar kach, avar min gedulato, Kohen Mashiach ne'vipal, v'nasim nevi Yisrael. Mashiach sheba min mishichato, mishichuto, v'yachar kach, וכן הנשיא שבא בגדולתו, יחד כחד, כל משיח בגיפל, והנשיא כהדיו. Mishnah says, in the case of an anointed priest who sinned on the basis of his own erroneous halachic ruling, and thereafter moved on from his anointment, meaning he was disqualified due to a blemish that befell him, or before he brought his sin offering, and likewise, in the case of a king, a Nasi, who sinned and thereafter moved on from his prominence before he had brought an offering, an anointed priest brings a bull, despite the fact that he is no longer the high priest, and the king brings a goat, as he would have done during his reign. In the case of an anointed priest who moved on from his anointment, and thereafter sinned, and likewise the king, who moved on from his prominence and thereafter sinned, an anointed priest brings a bull, which he would have brought while he was high priest, and the status of the king is like that of a commoner. Gehediot. And the Gemara starts the last few words of the lines of the Gemara. Hashta yeshlomar avar mishichuto. The Gemara questions the formulation of the Mishnah. Now, it can be said that an anointed priest who moved on from his anointment